Rand Paul, the Republican senator from Kentucky, is being absolutely ridiculed for saying, look, here's how Democrats are stealing elections. And when you go and you read, you see, oh, Democrats are stealing elections by convincing voters to vote for them and encouraging voters to go out and vote or to vote absentee or to determine how it is that they plan to vote. It's amazing that he even thought this was a logical thing to put out there. So Rand Paul tweeted out 2 days ago a link to an article in the American Conservative. Okay, the article we're going to look at, it's called The Wisconsin Purchase. And a lot of the article is about Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, and the Center for Technology and Civic Life's involvement in Wisconsin. Okay. And Rand Paul tweeted out a quote from the article adding how to steal an election. So Rand Paul says, how to steal an election. Quote, seeding an area heavy with potential Democratic votes with as many absentee ballots as possible, targeting and convincing potential voters to complete them in a legally valid way, and then harvesting and counting the results. This is called elections. This is called elections. Look at what Rand Paul is saying. The way that Democrats have used trickery to win is figuring out where are there lots of Democrats who might vote, but they might not, going there, convincing them to vote, and having them fill out absentee ballots in a legally valid way. In other words, voting, running an election. And it really is worth looking at the actual article that is linked to. And there is stuff, if you look at the article in sum total, you will find a bunch of stuff here about the influence of money, electioneering, Mark Zuckerberg, grants, using entities to shield one's personal, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that is not the way I would like to see elections run, but it is legal and it is part of the sort of status quo campaign finance structure that Republicans, generally speaking, are absolutely fine with. But then the incredible part is you look at the strategy and it's called running an election. So there's a heading called How the Wisconsin Five Sought to Implement the Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan. And it says the Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan lists 4 major strategic objectives. First, encourage and increase absentee voting by mail and early in person, mainly through providing assistance in completing absentee ballots and submitting them and installing ballot drop boxes. There's nothing ominous there. It's make sure that people have places to drop off ballots, make sure people know how to fill out their ballots. Completely legal. It's called voter engagement. Second, dramatically expand strategic voter education and outreach efforts, particularly to historically disenfranchised residents. This is their smoking gun, where the strategy literally is do outreach, particularly to groups that have been historically disenfranchised, so that they know how to vote, where to vote, what their options are for voting, how to get absentee ballots. Wow. How dark and ominous. Third, recruit election workers, mainly from paid young activists who would replace the usual older election day volunteers. Get young people involved. Typically, these election day volunteers are older. That's a reality. Get young people involved. Completely legal, completely good. And a distant fourth in emphasis and level of funding was fund COVID-19 safety COVID-19 related safety measures. Nothing remotely concerning there. Just nothing remotely concerning there. They also in the article put in italics as if this is the smoking gun, and this is the part that Rand Paul tweeted out. But all of the resources developed toward ballot curing, drop boxes, vote navigators, partisan activists infiltrating local election office, etc., were aimed at one ultimate end. Here's their big smoking gun. As Rand Paul tweeted, seeding an area heavy with potential Democratic votes with as many absentee ballots as possible, targeting and convincing potential voters to complete them in a legally valid way, then harvesting and counting the results. This is what we call voting. This is what we call running an election. And per Rand Paul's explanation, here is Stacy Abrams, who is also listed in this article, explaining how to, quote, steal the election. And by that, I mean working to win the hearts and minds of voters so that they vote for you. Here is Stacy Abrams.
Now, you have long been a major voting rights advocate, but we are seeing a lot of new laws restricting voting, not just in Georgia, but across the country. So how are you going to tackle this and keep up this fight in 2022?
I'm excited to know that when the Senate comes back into session in January, the U.S. Senate is going to take up the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. These are two critical laws that will help protect voting rights across the country, because it's not about partisanship. This is about patriotism. My issue isn't who gets to vote. It's that everyone who is eligible is allowed to vote. My job as a candidate, of course, is to convince them to vote for me. But my job as an American is to ensure that every eligible voter has the right and the ability to cast a ballot.
So the important takeaway here is that for the Republican Party, this hasn't been the strategy for a decade. They are presenting as some kind of concerning or disturbing strategy, making sure people have the wherewithal and resources to vote, encouraging them to do so, and targeting areas where there's lots of potential voters for your side. That's called running an election. Republicans haven't done that for at least a decade. They essentially gave up trying to convince voters on policy in 2012 with Mitt Romney. You still had it a little bit when Mitt Romney ran against Barack Obama. They still sort of were running on policy, although the policy was increasingly vague and amorphous. In 2016, it was completely abandoned. Policy was completely abandoned. Trump still said things that sounded like policy, but it was not actually policy. The 2018 midterm, then, Republicans just straight up abandoned policy. In 2020, running on policy was a distant memory. And there's no indication that in 2022, Republicans are going to run on policy. They're going to run on trying to make it difficult to vote. And this is what they've been doing. Make it difficult to vote, particularly for people that are not likely to vote for you, and run on cultural issues, critical race theory, etc. You guys know the roster. So we have actually seen Democrats try to run on a platform of policy and voter enfranchisement. I'm not saying it's a platform I love in all ways. I've had no shortage of critiques and criticisms of the Democratic platform, but it's been, let's try to get people to want to vote, and let's use policy rather than cultural issues to do that. And Republicans running on cultural issues, running on fear. If you don't vote for us, brown people are going to invade from the southern border. We're going to take away, what was it Trump said? They would give you toilets that you have to flush 10 to 15 times and take away indoor heating and cooling and all these different things. We'll protect the suburbs, right? Extremely racially coded language. We'll protect you from people taking your jobs and, raping and all these different things. So now when you actually just run normal elections, it ends up being presented as this is how they are trying to steal the election. This is called running an election. This is called politics, and just another completely humiliating public statement by Senator Rand Paul. We'll have that tweet of his and more coverage of this on our Instagram, which you can find at David Pakman Show. You can also follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. One of our sponsors is Four Sigmatic, the company best known for their delicious mushroom coffee. Four Sigmatic's mushroom coffee is organic, fair trade, single origin Arabica coffee with both lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. Chaga mushrooms have actually been shown to have potential in supporting the immune system in peer-reviewed studies. I've been drinking Four Sigmatic coffee a lot lately. It actually doesn't taste anything like mushrooms. It just tastes like any delicious coffee, but it's really easy on my stomach, doesn't give me any jittery feeling or a midday crash. And they have over 20,000 five-star reviews. And best of all, if you don't love it, you'll get 100% of your money back because they stand behind their product. You've got nothing to lose by giving it a try. Four Sigmatic is giving my audience up to 40% off and free shipping when you go to foursigmatic.com/Pacman. The link is right underneath this video.